And for me, a lot of my confidence came going to law school and realizing, hey, I can hang in this arena. I can be with these fancy kids that went to good schools and have all, had all the pedigree. And I didn't. I was just a kid from Arizona who came from nowhere. And then suddenly, I'm in their same classes and I'm holding my weight. And I thought that was a big confidence boost for me, like early in my life.
Savannah, what a treat to have you on. I got to tell you, we're going to talk motherhood. We're going to talk success, your incredible success. We're going to talk about, of course, your new book. But I want to start here. What's been a defining moment in your life that's shaped who you are into the person that you are right now today?
Gosh, that's a big one. You didn't give me a light.
Out hot.
Yeah, let's just ease on into this. There's a lot of ways I could answer, but I'll just give you the answer that popped in my head, which is probably when my father died when I was the age of 16. And it was very shocking and unexpected. And I was young. And I realize now how young I was. I think at 16, you think that you're pretty much grown up, right? Aren't you at 16? So I thought, am I even allowed to be as sad as I am? And I think that is just a seminal moment in my life. I always think of it as sort of the BCAD moment on my own calendar, the line of demarcation. There's before my father died and there's after. And it had a huge impact on me in many ways. And now with the benefit of, 30 plus years, plus, I can see some things that, hard to say positive, but I see the good that has come. And I, of course, also still can feel the grief of that loss.
What are some of the things that come up for you when you think of sort of before and you think of after?
I always think about being 16 and feeling that I had now some knowledge that a lot of people my age didn't have. Like I knew something about loss and I knew something about how the world can shock you. And I had to grow up really fast. My mom was a stay-at-home mother, but suddenly had to find a job, find a way back to work.
Sure.
I was about to go into my senior year of high school and then college. And so there's a lot of ways. My mom is and was amazing. She's a huge part of anything I've ever accomplished in life. But there was a way in which my father died and my mom had so much to handle and do that in a way I kind of lost her too in that moment. So she, of course she's been, I don't want to overstate that. She's been there for me. She's amazing. She's the reason for my being, she's the reason for the confidence I had to ever step out and try anything because she supported me and believed in me. But the days of like, you're a little girl and we're like nurturing you and it's all easy. But no, it's like, hey, real life starts right now. It starts right now, ready or not, here it is.
It makes me wonder, you talk about how, we just have one life and you probably realized that at 16 at some level or as you progressed in the 30 plus years since then. Savannah, if you had to boil down your, you think about the success that you've had, you're a remarkably humble woman, which is so cool. If you had to boil it down to 2 or 3 things, what would those be?
I think, honestly, first, I would always say my faith and my foundation. I have definitely not lived a perfect or blameless life right until the present day. And I've not always lived a perfectly pious life either. I haven't always been super in touch with my faith, but my faith has always been a part of me. I've always been, since about 6 years old, in a conversation with God. And I've always felt my faith as the most internal and essential part of me. And I think because I had that foundation, that gave me courage sometimes to take big risks in life. And I think I always say, I had to give a speech about, it was like, one of those big, like, this is your life moments. And it's like, when I think about it, I say, I was lucky and I was blessed. And I truly feel that way. It's not like fake humility. Like I actually mean there's a lot of luck and more blessings.
Right.
But the third thing I would say is willingness to, at a few key moments, take some pretty crazy risks
Right.
and step out and believe in myself, or at least believe, you know what? Let's take it out for a test drive. Okay, let's see. Can you really do it? This is the time. And if you don't do it now, you're never going to have the guts again.
It takes confidence to do that. Where do you think the confidence came from to step into those moments of risk?
I think confidence came from, like I said, one, my faith, but also experience. I mean, I did not grow up confident. Even to this day, there are a lot of things I don't feel particularly confident about. But one of the beautiful things I love about getting older, and I love being middle-aged, and it, of course, comes over time, is that it's experience. Confidence comes from doing and surviving. It doesn't come from succeeding. It comes from just experiencing different situations and knowing that one way or the other, you'll be okay. And I think that's where I got the confidence. And for me, a lot of my confidence came going to law school and realizing, hey, I can hang in this arena. I can be with these fancy kids that went to good schools and have all, had all the pedigree, and I didn't. I was just a kid from Arizona who came from nowhere, and then suddenly, I'm in their same classes and I'm holding my weight, and I thought that was a big confidence boost for me, like early in my life.
Yeah.
And but you don't get those confidence boosts if you don't take it out for a test drive.
Totally.
Like if you don't say, okay, I'm going to try to go to Georgetown Law School.
Right.
So sadly, you have to take the risk before you feel confident.
That curiosity and the confidence at some level, it's what you're saying. I totally agree. It comes through doing. It comes through. You can't sit in a chair and think your way into confidence.
No one can tell you, and all of the inspirational quotes in the world won't convince you. You just have to do it.
Yeah, I love it. So, you and Hoda are the first female anchor duo on the Today Show. I know I've heard you talk a lot about this. What advice do you have for women, right? I mean, beyond what you shared, right? Step into the discomfort, take risks. What advice do you have for women who are aspiring to take that next step, to go for more in their careers?
I think confidence is the biggest part, but also don't wait for confidence. Sort of, it's not really fake it till you make it, but in a way it is. It's, act confidence until act as though you are confident until you actually possess that confidence. Because I am a big believer that if you have a vision or a dream or an ideal for yourself, there's a reason for it. Most of us are not really delusional. There's probably some quiet voice within you that's telling you, I think I have a knack for this, or I think I could do this, or I think I'd like to at least try. And I say, listen to that voice, follow it. I'm not trying to advocate for people to take stupid risks or risks that aren't thought out. But at some point you are going to have to put it out there a little bit. That's where everything interesting happens. And that doesn't mean everything good. It just means everything interesting, everything where your growth is. All of those things are on the other side of a risk, and the risk that you take on yourself. But deep down inside, you have to believe that you know what you're doing and you know who you are. And you know what your strengths are, and you know where your weaknesses are. So tell the truth to yourself, get honest with yourself, and then dream a little. And I think that's my best advice.
When you've stepped into those risks at some level, would you say your faith, it's as if when you step into those moments that almost God is holding you, he's wrapped around you, and that's your bubble wrap that gives you the safety and the confidence to keep stepping into those moments?
There's no question about it. And look, I live in the real world, and I've had many, many blessings, but things didn't always work out for me. And when you say, okay, I'm going to use my faith or believe and that my faith will protect me, it doesn't mean, it's not the same as saying, I'm going to go out here and try to accomplish this goal, and I know God will give me that goal. It's actually like, who knows? It's a crapshoot like everything, because we can't possibly know what is right for us necessarily, or what the larger picture is, or there's all kinds of ways in which we don't know whether or not the thing we hope for or the outcome we're hoping for is going to turn out as we want it. But the one thing we can know with certainty is that God will be with us and present to us and will be on our side. And that is a thought that I have definitely soaked in, reflected on, a thing I comfort myself with sometimes, especially when I've messed up or I feel like things aren't going well. I think to myself, well, God has brought me this far and he's not about to abandon me now. And that's where my confidence, that is faith, believing that God is there and God is good. Not that you're going to get what you want. You might get it, you might not. You might get it and think, I shouldn't have wanted that. I wish I had, you just have to, you got to live a little space for God to figure it out. But just knowing that you are held and that is assured that you can take to the bank.
Yeah, I love it. And your book, I want to dig in mostly what God does. What made you want to share this? Obviously, Savannah, this is really personal. It's vulnerable. It's different from what others might expect for someone in your position to write a book about. I love and respect that so much. What made you want to write this book?
It's so interesting, Molly, because in so many ways, I didn't want to write this book for most of my life. I have been a person of faith since I was a little girl. I've had different moments and iterations of my life where I've been more devout or less devout. I've never been super public about it. I would have no reason to be for most of my life. I was just, not a public person at all. But what I've realized and what I think is just so, it just tickles me, is that if you had said to me 5 or 10 years ago, hey, Savannah, listen, you're going to, your dream is going to come true. You're going to get to work at NBC and be on the Today Show and all this stuff. And here's the thing, you are going to write a book about faith, about being a Christian. I would have probably said, oh no, I hope not. Please. You know what? In fact, I don't even need, I don't know. Thank you. Yeah. Because not because I was embarrassed or anything. It's just I don't want to put myself out there. I'm happy. We don't need to do this. Most of my life, I just wanted to blend in and be like everyone else. Who wants to stick their neck out? Right. Especially now, especially on a topic like this. Sure. But here's the part that tickles me that I think is so lovely and beautiful, that somehow, in the way only God can, over the course of time, by the time I did it, it was something I did want to do. I was excited to do it. I was passionate to do it. He made it seem like it was my idea all along. And it went from being the thing that I would have considered to be pretty much a nightmare scenario to maybe I could write a book about faith. And what would that be like? And I'm no one is more shocked than me that we're sitting here talking about it.
Wow. Good for you. It's another example of stepping into the unknown.
Yeah.
And being held. And who's the book for?
Well, it's dedicated to my kids, Vale and Charlie. And, I think actually when you do lose someone young, as I did, I lost my father so young, I never take for granted that I will get to know my children as adults. I hope I do, of course, but so in some ways it's for them because it's everything I could think of that I would want to tell them about God, that I would want them to know. If I left tomorrow, it would be pretty much all I'd want to say for them to understand how I understand God. And what I mostly understand about God is that he loves you. But it's also, in many ways, it's a book that I wrote for myself, because I'm not writing lessons that I've learned and now I'm imparting from some mountaintop.
Right.
I'm writing lessons that I still need, and I still need every day, and reminders I still need every day. And to this very moment in time, there are things that I say, I might be going through something personally, and I think, okay, remember that mostly what God does is love you. I have to make myself go through some of these things that I write about because I need it. It's like they always say, the preacher preaches a sermon to himself. He preaches the sermon he needs or she needs. That's what this book is. It's the reminders I need about who God is, what his intention is toward us, and what our natural response to that love is, which is, spoiler alert, more love.
Yeah. Well, I love it because I found it almost as if a morning devotional book could serve in that way, where you wake up and you read it and you get your sort of head right before the day. As I was thumbing through the pre-copy, which I'm so grateful to get, it was just, that's what came up for me is, wow, this is a way to lean in to every day with this.
It's really bite-sized and accessible. This is not a big theology book, because what business would I have writing a book like that? I hope and think it's funny and light and a little irreverent. And, it comes from a Christian perspective. That's the perspective I have. But I hope that it's really universally appealing, whatever your faith or no faith at all. It's really just a call to love and be loved, and then to kind of reflect and soak on that. And so I do think it's meditative and contemplative. And I hope that, because each they're just a few pages long, you could read it and then just think about it and pick it up a year later if you want, or go to it in the middle. Or I joke in the forward, I'm like, just drop it on the floor and see where it lands, and then pick it up and start reading right there. I mean, you won't lose the plot.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And, you talked about your kids. The book's dedicated to your kids. You're a mother. I'm a mother too. And I love the way you talk about it in chapter 4, like a mother. Both of your children you had in your 40s, right?
Yeah.
How do you continue to advance and grow professionally while not compromising what matters most to you, your children, your family, your faith?
Well, this is where I feel like I have to see God's hand in my own life, because, all my life, all I ever wanted was kids and a family. And if at any moment I had really gotten those things, I can assure you I would have never tried to do anything necessarily in my career. I mean, I had a certain amount of ambition, but not that much, and far more ambition for a picturesque, perfect little family life. Well, that just was not available to me for a long, long time. Yeah. And to answer your question, I feel really blessed, not only, number one, that I got to have kids in my 40s. I mean, it's a miracle. On every kind of miracle, miracle, and medical miracle, both. I had one of each. But also because where I was in my career, I started at the Today Show as the co-host in 2012. I got married 2 years later and started having my kids. And the Today Show is challenging and amazing and all-consuming. But at that point, I had a lot more control over my schedule. I had a job where I had to be in the same place 5 days a week. Compare my 20s and 30s, I was traveling all over the world. I would go cover these trials when I worked at Court TV and be gone for 3 months and never step foot home. Like I have many, many colleagues and friends who did have their babies in their 20s and 30s. And I think they had it a lot tougher than I did, because they were trying to do both at the same time. And it's super, super hard. So, well, yes, of course, there are those moments. I feel extremely fortunate that the moment I had my kids, well, much later than I would have ever dreamed or wanted to happen, turns out it was right on time.
Wow, it is, at some level, has it changed or do you think it has impacted your appreciation at some level for what wasn't how you scripted it to be, but was in fact what it became, and all the blessings inside of that?
Yes. And that's when we talked about confidence. I mean, that's part of confidence. When you talk about experience begetting confidence, that's part of it. The experience is not, I had this experience and I achieved this and I achieved that. No, experience is, I went through this and I went through that. And now, with the benefit of perspective and time, when I open the aperture on how looking at those same events that were so devastating to me in the moment and seeing them now, I now can have confidence that there was a larger plan, that things have a way of working out. Obviously, in my tradition and my beliefs, I believe it's the hand of God, and that's like it's a wonderful faith to have. I understand how difficult it is because, on one hand, you believe in God, all-knowing God, and then you're like, why would he care about my little thing about whether I had a good job interview or not? That's crazy. And I understand that disconnect. I get it.
Yeah.
Intellectually. Sure. And what I tell myself when I have those kinds of thoughts is like, well, that's why he's God and you're not.
Right.
Like, if you're going to believe in God, have a big, robust concept. Believe in a God that's like running the world,
right,
and cares about your dumb little thing.
Sure.
It's God.
Sure.
Humans could never pull it off, but that's not what we're talking about.
Right.
So yeah, I do see now many, many life events in that context. And then when I reflect on the past and I look toward the future, I try to say, now look, if it were true then, Will it not be true now in this moment I'm having that's difficult? Imagine myself in 5, 10 years looking with this other perspective. And even though I don't see it now and I don't feel it now, can I leave space in my heart that perhaps I will one day? That perhaps, again, he who carried me to this point is not about to abandon me now. That's really where my faith is.
Well, and what I'm curious about, you get this question, I would imagine, all the time, right? You're married, you have children, you have an incredibly demanding job, it's public. I mean, you can't be sort of ready every day, right? You have to be totally ready every day. And yet you are a mother and a wife and, a Christian. And how do you tactically live into the alignment to not compromise the things that matter most to you? Tactically, how do you do that, right? In addition to the prayer, in addition to I'm sort of trying to get inside your head and heart on a daily basis. Because I think, Savannah,
But
part of
please
this.
don't, because on a daily basis, I don't think that it's anything to emulate I think I'm like everyone, you have your ups and downs. And then there are seasons where you feel like, hey, I feel like really connected to myself and I'm like doing good practices and I'm writing in my journal or I'm going to see the therapist or, me and my hubby are like chit-chatting every night and really connecting. And then there are other seasons where you're not. Yeah. You're just not. I just went through the holidays. I feel like I'm like, oh my gosh, grab the reins of life. I had too many drinks, too many nights in a row. It's like not good. I'm losing it, Yeah. And so all you can really hope is that, even if every day, some people are super disciplined, probably the people that listen to your podcast are like really disciplined. I am not. I'm a hot mess. Okay. But deep down inside, I have a foundation. You got to know your core. And I think like when I feel myself kind of like out on that tether, I'm like, go back to basics, back to basics, back to basics. What do I know? What do I know for sure? And just try to start there. And just not judge myself too hard, but I do because I think it's a fair judgment.
Right.
So
it's
luckily,
what drives you, right? At some level, it pushes you.
Yes. And I'm a pretty harsh judge of myself, but that's why I need God. That's why I need God's mercy, Right.
Sure. Well, and I love how you said that. I think women have to be gentle. We have to be gentle on ourselves. Yeah. And we will, to your point, we'll find ourselves like you did, which ended up being a blessing, at some level out of balance personally, but crushing it in your career, right? And which got you here. So, but we have to be gentle on ourselves all along the way, because I agree with you. There's going to be days.
It's gentle and also like trust in something, I thought for most of my 20s and 30s, I recently read some old journals, which is so revelatory and cringeworthy were the two words that came to mind. But you would have thought that my inability to find the right guy and have kids and all my friends were getting off married, going all that, it was the great tragedy of my life as recorded by my own journals. And meanwhile, here I am going along and happily and working very hard at it, I might add, on my career. But it was like that. I was like, oh, yeah. Like, I would be like, why does that all go so well? And this is such a disaster. Like, I would take a more mediocre situation, in both places.
Hello, alignment.
Right. But that's where you have to have like a little faith, like, hey, maybe God knows better than you, or pursue the thing that's working and the things you can control and bring yourself wholeheartedly to them. And the rest, well, do your best. Now, I didn't always take that advice. I forced many terrible situations and paid the price. But now with the benefit of time, I really see that.
How do you juggle that, right, Savannah, relative to how far to push with discomfort, curiosity, risk?
Yeah.
And then how far to say, you know what, I think God's telling me that this isn't working.
Yeah.
And I need to hit eject.
Gosh, that's like the question. I don't know, because also, I don't know if people will relate to this or not, but I'm such a doer and I have no patience.
Right.
I can remember times where I'm like, I feel like God told me not to do XYZ. It was very, very clear. And then the next day in the journal, it's like, so I went out and did XYZ, like I'm the worst. That's like, I love that we're talking about this, such good talking, but like, I am the last person anyone should emulate for anything other than, honesty and transparency with God. It's like, tell the truth to God, tell the truth to yourself, like the real truth, like get in there. Yeah. Get in there. Yeah. Tell it, like the thing you don't want to say, the thing you're embarrassed about. Like it's just you and it's just God. So go ahead and like bring out your ugly, bring out your dumb, bring out your hopeless, bring out your pathetic, bring out your cringeworthy. Like bring it out. Yeah. That's my best advice, because I feel like when you start in that place of radical honesty and transparency with yourself and with God, then you're at least set up to go. You're not deluding yourself and taking steps that are based on like a faulty premise. Like, you know who you are.
Sure.
For better, for worse.
Right. But at some level, I mean, do you have you're asking him questions, right? To try to gain the clarity.
Yes.
Is that the way that your conversation, it obviously exists in
but you know what? I feel like I write about it in the book. That's like, I can only think of one or two times in my whole life where I actually felt like I heard something very, very direct from God. Yeah. And it was shocking because I knew it wasn't from me, because it was not something I thought or agreed with at all. I was like, what? It was always like, huh? You said what? But most of us don't. That was like 20 years ago. I don't know if it's happened since. So I think that, I think what I would say is that when you're in touch with yourself, again, starting with like that honesty with yourself, and which is another way of saying honesty before God. If you believe in God, then you're all there together.
Sure.
And then putting those questions out, or those thoughts, and kind of putting it out there. Yeah, you're asking God and you're waiting for an answer. But I think in most people's experience, certainly mine, like it's not like an answer comes. And then also, even when events happen, honestly, often they're ambiguous, and for me, I can always like argue both sides of it. Be like, well, the postman rang the doorbell at just that moment. So that means A, send the letter, or B, buy stamps. Like so it's just like, it's really hard. It's really hard to be down here as just like this dumb human creatures that we are, without, multidimensional views. But I guess the short answer, as I ramble on here, is that put out that question and then listen attentively for an answer to come that settles in with you and feels right, and expect God to speak in many, many different ways. I have a whole chapter in the book about God speaks our language. And I really mean that. Like, he is fluent in the particular language that speaks to you. Meaning, maybe beauty, maybe it's a sunset, maybe it's a song, maybe it's a call you get from somebody, maybe it's writing in your journal, maybe it is a thought that crashes into your consciousness like a comet. I don't know. All I know is that God does answer, that he is always communicating, and it's our job to tune in. Now, we're human. Like, who knows? We may get it right, we may get it wrong. This is the other thing that life has just taught me. It's just like, man, get it wrong, get it right, screw it up, mess it up. God's still here, and he's still loving you. Like, that's the one thing that really, really matters. And that is unshakable. It's unshakable.
Is that what you tell yourself when you're walking up to interview the president? Is
yes.
Like, hey, I bet it is. At some level.
Oh, it's 100% what I. Yes.
And I give it all I got. I'm prepared, but I'm going to show up authentically. And
yes. And it's on you, God. It's on you. It can't be on me, because I am not equal to the task. Any president, by the way, any big interview.
Sure.
There's no part of me that feels confident or like, I got this. Can't wait to do question 3A. Gonna crush that. No, I'm dying. I'm like beset with anxiety. I've often asked myself, especially the later I get in my career, I'm like, why can't I just be normal? Like, why can't I just study and prepare and then be like, okay, I'm ready. And we sit down and we do it. Like, Why do I have to be such a hot mess internally? I like to think that I don't put my agita on others. You know, my husband would laugh, like when I used to fill in on Meet the Press, sometimes he's like, I'm just going to slide food under the door. Like she's just in the zone. She's like, I have nothing to ask. I have nothing to ask. Oh my gosh, I think I have a good question. No, I have nothing to ask. I have, you know, and it's like, why can't I just be cool? But I can't. And now what I've learned to do is just accept that that is my process. My fear, my anxiety, all of it. That is my process. I'm making friends with my troubles. I'm just like, that's who you are. And I know God will carry me. Doesn't mean I'm going to nail the interview.
Right.
Just means I'm not going to be alone.
Right.
And I'm not alone.
Right.
And that's the context I try to place it in.
I mean, you though shift your self-talk at some level through your faith. Would that be fair to say? I mean, you're walking up to an interview, you're a hot mess, as you say, which is hard to buy, but I'm buying it because you're saying it. So you walk up and your mind is going, but you've got to change your story in that moment, right? So you can show up with the kind of confidence you need to do what you do the way you do it at the highest level. In addition to prayer, in addition to that conversation, what are you telling yourself in that moment to shift the self-talk? Because that's a big problem for men and women.
This is such a good question. And I'll tell you, honestly, this is where those Bible verses that I memorized all my life, they come to me and they're become a mantra. And I actually write about this in the book. I wrote about the first day that I anchored the Today Show. And I was terrified. I was scared to the point of illness. I literally had a migraine. And for several days, actually, but certainly on the first day, and I had to lay down in the dark in my office in this new job where I felt the whole world watching me, not just because it was Today Show, but it was like a time of controversy in the show. So it wasn't like, oh, we're so glad to have you. It was like, oh my God, this is a disaster and I'm about to get killed. Yeah. You know, that's how I felt. And I remember a verse coming to me that morning. I looked to the hills, and where does my help come from? It comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. And I held that in my heart. And the reason it was so profound is like, I looked to the hills. So it was like, first thing, look up and out. Like when you are scared about whatever you're scared about or whatever your problems are, this is how you're looking. You're looking inward. You're looking, you're like, it's all on you. It's all on you. It's like that. I looked to the hills I was like, oh, I need to look. I need to see help on its way. I need the help to be credible and mighty. I look to the hills. Where does my help come from? It comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. Oh, good. It's coming from the person that made heaven and earth. Good. That's what's going to be required. I'm going to need a miraculous intervention in this moment. And so I'm not good at the self-talk. I know it works for a great many people. With my particular psyche, like I can't Stuart Smiley style sit in front of a mirror and be like, you got this, girl, you're a boss, B, da-da-da. Like I can, but I don't believe it. I'm like, shh. But I do believe in God. Right. And I do believe that he holds me. And I do believe he does that whether or not I deserve it, whether or not I've invited him into my chaos, whether or not I've even thought of him. I still believe that he is here. And so when I get a verse or something like that that comes to me, I think it again and again and again. I reframe it in my mind. Sometimes I might imagine it physically, imagine what that would look like if help were arriving on a mountain, you know, and it's a calming way, but I need something external. I cannot self-generate. Because I already told you about my internal dialogue. It's messy, messy, messy. Right. It works. I always say like my psyche is like a Rube Goldberg, like it's like a hairdryer and a bobby pin and a dresser is on top of it. And then like a piece of belly button lint. And it's like, it's holding together, but you wouldn't want to be like, you know, but
house of cards.
Right. However, not really. Right. It's not really, because what it's contained in is the bedrock faith. And that you can't knock over. So I'm free to be my little messy self. Right. Because God is holding it all in.
I love the way you talk about how the verses become a mantra, and the mantra is what you tell yourself in these moments. Amen.
Yeah.
So we end with rapid fire. I want to be cognizant of your time. I'm going to hit you with a couple quick things. You ready?
Okay.
You
Yes.
ready? All right.
I'm terrible at rapid fire. Go.
No, you're not. Pretend you're laying on the dark floor in the office and here you're taking it all in. What's the best advice you've ever received?
A professor of mine, when I was trying to figure out, should I go to law school or should I try to stay in TV? He said, Savannah, think big.
Love it.
Which I knew what he meant. Like,
Yeah.
don't scale down your dream for yourself. At least have a big dream. Like, you think big. Yeah. Everyone else will think small and tell you what you can't do.
Yeah. Love
Tell
it.
the truth about what you really want.
Mm. Who's a person you want to interview that you haven't yet?
I honestly, there's no one at the top of my list right now. Yeah. Taylor Swift.
Oh, right.
I love Taylor, and she has no reason to do an interview because she's amazing and she doesn't need to, but I love her and I would love to interview her. And my daughter would really love me if I could interview her.
Yeah. You know, and that's really, by the way, Savannah, what it's all about, isn't it? Being able to go, it's all about like, hey, I know, I feel that way with my girls sometimes. What advice would you give your younger self?
Don't worry so much. I would give that advice to the current version as well. But definitely then, like, don't worry. It's all going to be okay. Yeah. It's all going to be okay.
Yeah. My grandma used to say, don't borrow trouble.
Oh, my mom said that too, but I was always borrowing it.
Hey,
and her trouble and everyone else's troubles.
I think it's human at some level, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the show's called Game Changers. So who or what is a game changer who inspires you and why?
I think for my life, my biggest game changers have been my kids. Becoming a mom really broke open vulnerability and in a way that was really terrifying at first. It's hard for me to, as the cliche says, go walking around the world with my heart outside my body. But the challenge of them, the joy of them, the thrill, the worry, the really difficult questions about what is the best way to raise a kid and how do you share faith with them? And, you know, how do I make sure they're feeling like they can express their feelings at home, but they're not like little self-indulgent brats? Like all the parenting questions are so hard. So for me, that's the biggest game changer of my life in the best way and also the most challenging way.
They are our true legacy at some level, aren't they? Our children, our ability to pour into them every day.
Maybe our only legacy in the end.
Yes.
I think there's a famous, I feel like you can delete it if it's not right. I feel like Jackie Kennedy said something like, if you mess up your kids, I'm not sure it matters what else you do right.
Oh, that is so good.
I know. It's something like that. But I always think that. It's like, you blow this, does it really matter what else you did?
Totally. And I think what's so cool is, I mean, you're thriving in your career and you're thriving with those little miracles. I call my girls, we have 3 girls, I call them miracles because that's what it is, Savannah, right?
They are.
Yeah.
I hope I am. I'm trying. Let's just say that. I'm trying. I don't know if I'm thriving, but boy, am I trying.
Hey, you're giving it your all. It's the days that drag sometimes with young kids, isn't it? But it's the years that fly by and we only get one shot at it. Yeah. Savannah Guthrie, this was fun. Thank you so much.
What a great conversation. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.